Hey, it's Writers Row, where we talk about the writing community on Twitter, and we talk about writing, the creative side, and the business side. If you like the content we've been putting out, make sure to subscribe down below, give this video a thumbs up, and if there's anything you'd like us to talk about, make sure to comment down in the comments below. I am DC Wright-Hammer, science fiction thriller writer for the Between Two Minds series, and I'm joined by my co-host, as always,
good-looking co-host, right?
the King Huckster himself.
Okay, whatever.
Who are you? Who are you?
My name is David Gane, and I am the co-writer of the Shepherd and Wolf mystery series, a young adult teen. Yay! There, thanks. That's awesome. So yes, that's who I am, and we're joined with a special guest again, who is.
I'm Dawn Hosmer, and I have released recently a psychological thriller, and I also write contemporary fiction.
Awesome. And
Really excited.
It's Hosmer, not Hosmer, as I screwed up. And you pointed out very quickly on Twitter.
Of course. I couldn't let that pass by.
Okay, so I'm going to get into this because I'm really kind of excited and curious about this because as soon as I got on Twitter, I think you and DC were the two people that really showed up early on. You were kind of like promoting your books. I knew about bits and pieces really quickly and really early. But I think the first thing that I really want to know is how the hell do you sell books on Twitter and in general? Because it seemed like you guys were out there and popular and doing well. And I think DC and I kind of have been talking about this, and it's like, especially after the Huckster thing that went through on Twitter recently, it's like, how do you sell books? So Dawn, can you just tell me how to sell books and then we can move on?
I wish
Why it's so
there was
hard?
a
Why
magic...
it's so hard for me and so easy for you? That's the question I want.
And people do ask me that because I've seen a lot of people say that they don't sell books on Twitter, and it is hard for them. And I don't know. Other than Twitter, I joked in the beginning, but Twitter is my job. Twitter and writing are my job. And not only that, but I have fun on Twitter and I interact on Twitter and I get to know people on Twitter. And I really think that that has served me well in terms of people wanting then to read my book.
Okay, so what do you mean by it's your job on Twitter, or your job is Twitter?
That's my nice way of saying I'm addicted to Twitter. That's my lie. I tell myself I spend a lot of time on Twitter, and I make sure. That's not an
putting you on the spot, David. Come on now.
No, because like sometimes I'm on. Like last week, I lost 3 days being on Twitter. Seriously, and it was a good. If I think I worked overtime on Twitter. If it was a normal 9-to-5 job, I worked overtime on it. But after that, I was like, okay, I got to scale back because then I got to go write a book and get that kind of stuff done. So when you look at it as a job, how many hours do you put in, do you think?
It's hard to say because it's spread throughout the day. So always in the morning, I catch up on notifications and I scroll through my timeline at least 20 minutes. I mean, and sometimes I have to set a limit because, you can get stuck there forever. So I do catch up on my notifications and I try very hard to respond personally to every single comment that someone makes. I feel like that's important. And then throughout the day, I'm constantly checking my notifications because if I'm not, they get out of control and my head feels like it's going to explode. So I'm constantly checking those throughout the day. And then I'd say twice in the evening, at least, I scroll through my timeline and comment and interact.
And you feel like doing that on a regular basis is helping you sell books?
I don't know. What I do think
I love that answer, to be honest. That's
I
perfect.
don't know. What I do think helps is I every day participate in VSS 365 and do a writing piece. And then I also pick one other of the daily writing prompts to participate in. And I think that probably helps as much as anything else I do, because then people know, hey, you can tell a story. You know, if you can tell a story in 240 characters, maybe I should read your book, because maybe you can tell a story in a longer format. I think that helps.
Okay, so let's do a quick, what is VSS?
Very short story. And then the
Okay.
365 just means daily. And they give you a prompt word, and then you write a very short story using that prompt word.
And I think we're going to try and do a more full-blown episode at some point down the line. But where do you get those prompts from?
Each month is a different person that does the prompts. This month it's Irene Dreams.
Okay.
But you can search hashtag VSS365 hashtag prompt each day, and it will give you the word.
There we go. I never knew that.
Now you know. See? Maybe it'd help you sell some books.
Well, and I want to circle back, because I think, you know, I get what you're saying, Dawn, and I tend to agree. But I think people that are watching this, they might say, okay, so I need to be on Twitter a lot, I need to do this or that, and maybe that'll sell books. But I think we have to frame it in a different way to some extent, because you're not trying to sell books, and to some extent you're doing actually very little marketing to some extent. What it seems like you're doing is you're sort of building a brand, the brand that is Dawn Hosmer, the brand that is, you know, bits and pieces, and is an extension of that. The VSS is an extension of that. The things you're doing are showing that, you care. Like, I think in pretty much everything I see you do on Twitter is just like, you can feel your personal touch in all of it. And that, you don't always get that, because it is 280 characters, and we are like standing in line at the grocery store trying to tweet something silly.
Right.
And you can hang with that too. You're silly just like all of us, Don. I know it. But I think you know, and even all that, even after all that's said and done, all the hours you put in, there's no metric to say it sold this many books. So I kind of want to draw a distinction between, you know, yeah, Twitter's your job, and you put in a lot of effort, and it shows, and I think it's very impressive. But I don't want people to walk away thinking that's going to equal X number of book sales, or that's going to equal X number of reviews, or things like that, because the writing community is made up of other writers, and, you know, they pick and choose. Every writer is a reader, and they pick and choose what they want to read next. And a lot of times it helps if you're just popping up in their feed. If you care, if you reach out to them, they kind of gravitate towards your brand, but really who you are. They gravitate towards you as a person. And so I think that's how I would explain much of your success, I think, is that you're a good person that comes out and people gravitate towards you.
Well, and I think some of it goes back to, I spent my career in social work. I am a people person. I love people. I enjoy interacting with people. I don't work outside the home now. So Twitter is my interaction with humans. So I think that some of that nature that in the helping professions comes across in Twitter, because I miss that. And I do care about the people that I interact with. And I feel like I've built some great friendships. I'm going to have lunch with a Twitter friend tomorrow that I've never met in person. So I'm like,
I'm so excited for that. I love it when
I
Twitter people meet.
I know.
Well, and I think you actually, just the way you phrased it is that you're not working, you have time at home. I think you mentioned before the show that your husband does work.
Mhm.
And so that actually, I think, might contribute to somebody thinking that it's hard to sell books, because a lot of times we're doing it alone. A lot of times we're doing it we have to come up with the marketing campaigns. We have to come up with, setting prices, and we got to work out all the technical details, and putting our books on the internet and all this stuff is very isolating. And so I think I used an analogy on Twitter, and I've said it on this show before. Sometimes it feels like you're plowing a field and you walk away with like a pound of crops as a result. Like you've done all this effort, and we still have to do a show on all the extra stuff you have to do as a writer just to have a platform. But I think that's part of it too. It feels hard to sell because it feels like we're doing it alone. And so I think one of the things we wanted to do with Writers Row, and particularly with this episode, is like if Dawn Hosmer thinks it's tough to sell a book, and I think we'll get more into that, it's okay for somebody else to feel that way too. It's absolutely a difficult thing to do in this day and age.
Mhm. For sure.
Okay, so it's definitely hard. It takes a lot of work. Kind of both of you have been talking about that. Are there, and also I kind of, when you were talking, DC, about not everyone has the time to spend on Twitter, for example, right? So that also gets in the way. And also, Twitter is not the only end-all be-all of going out and selling your books, right? Like, it's making connections and selling, communicating your brand and communicating what your books are and everything like that. But, what if I can only put an hour into Twitter, and then like am I totally screwed for trying to sell my books? Do you know what I mean? Like, is this like the only way is putting the time into Twitter or whatever sort of way, or doing marketing plans, or like is it that, I guess there's that triangle, right? Time versus work versus, I forget what the other one that I was thinking of, but you know what I mean? Like, do I have to pick one or the other, or at least one side or the other, to get results? Or can I just put my books out there and hopefully they'll sell?
I think you have to put something somewhere. So I might not have a lot of money to put into marketing, but I do have the time, and I have the time to build my brand, and I have the time to give towards that. Whereas somebody who works full time, they might have the money to do that more than I do.
That was the other part of the triangle, I realized.
What was it?
I'm like,
Money.
time, work, money. I'm like, oh yeah, that was the one.
That's it. Yeah, so I think you have to put it out there some way. Either that's by spending the money, spending the time, or a little bit of both. At least that's my experience.
So if you're not going to be putting the time into marketing yourself on Twitter, for example, you put the money into lots of advertisements and maybe search engine keywords and all that kind of thing.
But I think the problem that especially independent authors have is that some of them do put money into advertising and marketing, and they don't see return on investment. And so, there's a lot of reasons for that, but I think fundamentally we kind of have to take a step back and what kind of atmosphere are we trying to sell books in? What world is that? And I think that reading is not what it used to be. Like reading used to be, half of or much more of the content that was out there in the world for entertainment or knowledge if it's nonfiction writing. And now we're just saturated constantly with entertainment content and educational content, from YouTube to every streaming service to magazines to Twitter is actually constant content that's just being fed to us in very small snippets. And so we're in this era where we're just bombarded. on top of that, reading is personal to everyone, and we're being trained to take smaller and smaller snippets of content. And reading a book is really like making a commitment. Like, I have to find the time, I've got to have the energy, I've got to be interested in it. It's got to be basically the perfect storm of things that occur for someone to even know about your book at all, choose your book amongst all the other books and content and everything, have the wherewithal to actually read it, like they have to have, like, reading is part of what they do. Then, oh, that's great, we've made a sale and someone has read it. Do they actually think about it? Do they care about it? And do they have enough time, energy, and the desire to write a review for it? Like, that in and of itself, that whole process is exhausting for me to talk about, much less for people to do. And this is where we're at. This is what we're doing as independent authors, as authors who maybe have a publishing contract but still have to do their own marketing. This is where we're trying to put our product on a completely overflowing shelf with customers who are just running past.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna be totally I don't know what I'm gonna be. But you kind of added some extra steps in there that, okay, it's cynical, but like, if you wanted to, as long as you sell the book, it doesn't matter any of the other parts for somebody, right? Like, yeah, it's nice to have the reviews. It's nice for them to read it and everything, but hey, you at least made the sale.
Sure.
Does that matter? And it's not like I'm trying to be funny about it, but it's true. It's like, it's I do kind of wonder if there are people out there who don't really care if you read it or not. You just sell it and then move on, right? And we are competing with those kind of people as well. We're competing. I was going to say it's not really competition. It should be kind of support each other. But if you're against somebody who doesn't really care about any of that, they're taking valuable money from a possible customer that wants something of worthwhile value, right?
Maybe.
If you disagree, I want to hear it all.
See, the thing that came into my mind when you were talking is, to me, it is important. The sale is only one part of the equation. I want to know you read it. I want to know what you thought of it, whether you hated it, whether you liked it, whether you loved it. And so for me, those reviews and that feedback is so important. I mean, even if somebody doesn't leave an Amazon review, if they reach out to me via DM and just say, "Oh my gosh, I read your book. I loved it, hated this part," that means the world to me.
And I know that you would send me lots of emails or DMs about whether I read your book or not.
Me? I would never. Send you gifts, throwing a book at you. Read the book.
Well, so have you finished it? Have you done the review for me yet, Dave?
Did she just send you her Amazon link knowing you have the book? Like, here's where you put the review when you're done.
Arrows pointing.
Right.
No, and that's true. Like, I absolutely, like, that's what I get out of writing the book and getting it into somebody's hands. And because I've said I don't really care if you buy it or get it from the library or get it handed down to you. It's great if, financially it's great, but I just want people to read it. So maybe I'm getting in my own way to answer the question, why is it so damn hard to sell a book? Well, yeah, here, take a book.
And I think it goes back to two things. It goes back to what your definition of success is as a writer. Is it getting people to read your stuff? Is it getting money for people to read your stuff? Is it a little bit of both? But you have to have sort of those definitions of success. And so I think for us fiction writers, we put so much of ourself into our stories. And we really do want that feedback. We want to put something out in the world and get something back for it. And money is a piece of that. Of course, we want that because we put so much time, effort, and money into making the books. But yeah, I mean, I think if you're doing like nonfiction, if you're doing something like a self-help book, if you're doing best ways to make an ad, those are things where it's like you do want to sell the volume. Like you're not, yeah, you want reviews and yeah, you want people to read it and like it, but the piece of you that's in there is the piece that they purchased. Basically, they purchased to get whatever piece of information. Yeah, instruction and move on. It wasn't entertainment. It wasn't romantic, like this romanticized version of whatever reality you've created. It's not this like long, like I read on my Kindle that my book, on average, people read it in 7.5 hours. That's a long time to hang out on my book. Like that's a long time.
I took way more time on your book.
Right, exactly. But no, so I think it goes back to those two things of what is your definition of success, and then basically, are you trying to just push volume, or are you trying, if you want to sell subsequent books, just selling that one, to whoever's on the street without much interest. Okay, great, you made a sale, but they're never going to remember you, or most likely won't come back for that next book. And especially when we write series, it's funny because people are like, oh, write a series and that's how you make it big. But it's just as hard to sell series as it is standalones because people see it as an even bigger commitment. Oh, there's going to be a book 2 and a book 3 and all this stuff. So there's like pros and cons to each one.
Well, and I am not typically a series reader until I joined Twitter and the writing community. But both of you have written series, but it is overwhelming to me because I'm looking at this to be read pile and I'm like, oh my gosh, I still have 50 authors I need to read their first book before I can loop back around to the second book, regardless of how much I loved it. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like how I feel a commitment to people I interact with on Twitter that if I tell them I'm going to read your book, I'm going to read your book. And to me, I take that commitment seriously, which I think feeds into our discussion, because I see a lot of people say, well, why can't I make sales? Twitter doesn't work for me for sales. How are you getting sales? But then I never see them comment on any other indie writers' books that they've read. And I think that is part of it, is being an active member of a community where you're giving as well as receiving. And for me, that giving means I'm going to read your book and I'm going to leave a review.
Right.
So I do want to bring this up because we've been talking just about Twitter and those kind of sales, but we're also not talking about all the other kind of avenues or channels that you could sell your books. I have very little sales online, but put me in a room with a pop-up that we like. My writing partner and I do a lot of pop-ups, and we have a lot of success at that. So I do kind of wonder, is it a case of why is it so damn hard to sell a book? Is it maybe some people are just not finding the right channels that work for them, right? And I'm also kind of doing some work now to try and figure out what ways am I failing online to try and open that up and try and solve that problem. Because I really would love the success that we have in person to translate online. And yeah, I've tried to give my book away and no one takes it online. So I got to figure out something here. What's going on there?
I mean, it's tough because I haven't done many in-person sales. Most of my success has come online. So I think I think this gets back to what Dawn had mentioned earlier, and that's building that sort of platform, that brand, but also building the community and learning from each other. I think we could probably do a whole episode on doing pop-ups and the whole process you go through that with David, because I think um, I don't know that I
love
have those
pop-ups.
opportunities, but maybe I do, and I'm just missing them. And so when I say, why is it so damn hard to sell a book? It's because I'm hitting my head against the same wall and I'm getting the same damn result. And instead, I need to be looking for different avenues. And this is something I've mentioned in our marketing episodes, is that you've got to do layers of marketing. Like, you can't put all your eggs into one basket and then hope you're going to get return on investment. You have to have like 10 or 12, or every week you got to have like 2 or 3 different things, whether it's doing an interview like on Writers Row or other shows, having like
Nice plug there, DC.
right. Well, I'm a huckster, baby. So uh, or having sometimes you do a sale on your book, or giving away books, or doing different things that you're always relevant. I think that's probably the height of what you can hope for, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's in person, is that you're relevant. People are thinking about you, how to get your books, especially if you have a catchy cover and a cool premise. You just got to be on people's minds, and eventually that's turns into sales. That's what I've found, is that if you're around enough, you do it in a genuine way, you're not too much of a spammer, you're obviously interacting. Again, this is mostly online, but I imagine that's also in person as well. That you want to be seen as a person who cares, not just someone trying to make a sale, like you mentioned earlier, David. Um, and and so um, and so I think that's part of it, is that you got to have channels for selling as well as channels for marketing. You can't try to just do one thing, especially if that's not working. You don't have anything to lose for trying different things.
Dawn, do you want to follow up?
Yes, a couple of things that came to my mind too are having your book available on multiple platforms, meaning like I have my book on Audible, I have it on Kindle, Unlimited, paperback, hardcover. I think the more avenues it's available, the more needs you can meet with your product, because some people don't ever read Kindle books, so they want either a paperback or a hardcover. Some people have a lot of time in a car, so they want that Audible version. So I think that makes a difference as well. And then the other thing that came to mind when DC was talking is stepping out of your comfort zones to find what works for you. One of the commitments I made to myself this year is that no matter how uncomfortable I was with something, if an opportunity presented itself for my book, I would say yes. And this video is a perfect example of that, because this is my first video interview. I'm not comfortable doing this, but
you did it for us.
I did, and I was crying because I hadn't yet.
Oh,
But I think you have to step out of your comfort zone and know that, okay, it's not comfortable for me maybe to do a pop-up, but maybe that's what's going to work for you in your book. Or it's not comfortable for me to do a video, but maybe that's the step I need to take. And I think just allowing yourself to take risks and say, forget the comfort zones, get rid of those, and let's do what I need to do to get my book out there, if that's your goal.
right. Well, and to add to that too is to not tie the number of sales that come from any one thing to the value of it. Because I think it's very easy to say, I only sold 3 books at that pop-up and I sure was uncomfortable. I'll never do that again. But 3 books, even if you sold 1 book, even if you sold none, but someone took your card, or you sold none, but you talked to a half a dozen people, and now they actually know your book is out there. And I think it's tough, because it is a little piece of us. Every little book we sell is a piece of us, and we're like, oh, okay, there it goes. It's, like we're either selling whatever it is. We want it to be the next big thing, but this is a slow process. This is baby steps before you can walk, and before you walk, you can run. And like, I know very few people who are able to support themselves just selling books. But if you want to start that process, and my cat is actually one of them. She sells books out of my home. No.
It's like
Almost made the whole episode.
Oh, the show's on. I gotta come talk.
Right. No, it's a good segue. I was talking too much. That's what she was telling me, actually. She said, "Shut up."
Move it along, DC. We're finishing up.
So yeah, go on.
How are we on time?
We could probably wrap it up. I think we should probably get to selling some things if we had this whole episode. Why is it so damn hard?
Sell the cat.
Advertising. I will actually start that we are taking sponsorship for our videos. So if you have a book release that's coming up and you'd like Writers Row to sponsor, if you'd like to sponsor Writers Row to push the momentum of your book, reach out. I'll have the email down in the description below. It's writersrowoftwitter@gmail.com. And you can reach out, and if we're interested in letting you sponsor our video, we'll get back to you for sure.
We do look at each one and kind of connect with it, or decide how we connect to it, right, DC?
Right.
I want to clarify that.
Yeah, we don't pick favorites, but at the same time, we at Writers Row, we're trying to balance sponsorship with, basically how well do we know the person, and so it's kind of a mix. We just kind of take it as they come.
Do we support the product? I think is a good way to look at it, right?
Exactly.
If we're because that's our first step. So, okay. Anything else you want to promote, DC?
I want to promote you promoting something else.
Okay. I'm gonna promote two things.
Oh, look at this guy.
So yes, DC's and Dawn's books. I've read them both. I enjoyed them both. They are on Amazon and on your websites both. Can you buy yours off of your website, Dawn?
No.
Okay.
But I think it directs you to Amazon.
Send you to Amazon. Yeah. But you can also buy them on CunusandGane.com. And you can buy them together, which is really wonderful.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Stickers. Or you can get this lovely Write Like a Mofo t-shirt or Read Like a Mofo t-shirt if you need to read more. So yes, go to CunusandGane.com. That's CunusandGane.com. COUNIOSG.
Earning his crown. Earning that crown.
It'll be down below.
Dawn, do you have anything to promote?
I steal your thunder.
You did. I had my book right here, ready. Look, twins. And I just think promoting the writing community on
Here, it's Pieces and Bits. It's the sequel.
I'd like to point out that Dawn's is a little longer of a book.
But it's also not as wide.
Oh, yeah.
Dimensions.
Just a little bit.
Right.
I like to measure books.
I just like to promote the writing community on Twitter and Writers Row because you guys do an excellent job. I'm not a YouTube fan, but I've watched most of your videos. So I just thank you for doing this.
Well, now that we've invited you on, you'll watch more of them, right?
Of course. You earned my favor.
Yes. Finally, we gave in and had to bring Dawn on. No, we always had the plan to bring you on, Dawn. It finally happened. So
I hear you.
It's all about matching up the people with the topic, right? So
we appreciate it, Dawn. You're always welcome on Writers Row. Sorry,
I was just gonna be a smart ass. Continue on.
Gee, what a surprise.
No, go ahead. I was trying to wrap it up, and you stole my
You
thunder.
wrap it up.
Okay. Thank you for watching Writers Row.
And that's when it nosedives.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night. Bye. Good day. Good afternoon. Whenever.